Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych.
Welcome to the show. Well, Rich, all good things must come to an end. Of course, I'm talking about my beard. My wife has given me the ultimatum. It's either her or the beard. So I'm going to miss her. Why don't you get us tipped off? Maybe you can smarten me up.
I'm about to make you mentally wealthy.
All right, hold on. Let me sit down. Oh, wait. Okay,
this is a mental wealth tip for you.
Mental wealth tip of the day.
For you, for me, and for all the people out there in the nano universe. Okay, here it comes. Many people are unhappy because they sacrifice the yearnings of their souls for the expectation of others. You do that, you're not going to be happy. So that's make you very mentally wealthy today.
I do feel wealthier. Thank you.
I personally like that one.
I like them all. I like them all.
Good. I enjoy them. I like doing that mental wealth tip. It's a lot of fun for me to look up stuff that some of it I've actually written. Others I'm just stuff I've read, but it's all wealth.
It's all wealth and mystery. And mystery is what we're talking about today. Because
I like that. Wait. I got to get my mystery guy here. Got a mystery guy for us here. So we're protected in the mystery. Let's go.
I like that. Wizard Man? Can we get Wizard Man?
No, the wizard guy. Yeah, this is the wizard guy.
I feel like wizard guy should be involved in today because
should I keep him here, so you can see him, or is that too
distracting? We're gonna want him nearby because
I'll have him nearby. He's always nearby.
There's unexplained behavior of humans throughout history that make you question what were they thinking, and more importantly, how were they thinking? And to what extent were they thinking? And to whom were they praying? Or to whom were they communicating with or idealizing? Because some of these monuments that have been built by various people throughout time, no one will argue are impressive and amazing feats. The ones that really stick with us and kind of the archaeological lore are the unsolved ones, are the ones that we really scratch our heads and say, geez, got no clue how or why they did that. And kind of a spoiler alert, you have personal experience with one of these that we're going to get into. So
I'm glad to hear that.
Where do you want to start? I mean, I feel like we should go to Costa Rica. Maybe Costa Rica is nice this time of year.
I know.
So
actually, I don't know. I've never been there, but
apparently it's jungle lovely. It's just beautiful every direction that you look. But there are these interesting artifacts there that nobody totally knows how or why they're there, because it's mostly rainforest, and you can just be wandering through the rainforest and run across what the locals call las bolas, which newsflash means balls. But these are more than balls. These are like giant stone spheres in the middle of the jungle. They're carbon dated back to about 600. So, you're talking 1500 years ago. They were carving these almost perfect spheres in the middle of nowhere long before, Columbus. They're made out of a very unique stone, which might tell you a little bit about how they were built. It's a type of a stone that comes from volcanic activity. But did these people just have too much time on their hands, or what were you thinking about these massive spears that are just sort of in the middle of nowhere, perfectly carved into these spherical shapes, most likely by smaller stones. What were these people thinking?
How do we know how they were carved?
Well, I think they've done like electron microscopy to kind of look at scratch marks and an estimation of the tools that they had available to them. But, you know, thinking inside the box, that's the presumption. But no one really knows. It's one of the great
Are there a
mysteries.
lot? Are there a lot of them?
Yes. And I forget how far apart they are or if they're arranged in a particular arrangement. But there are countless stones from what I understand. And they're just sort of peppered throughout southern Costa Rica. Why? I mean, are they signaling aliens? Are they practicing their masonry? Some people think they have astronomical significance.
Bocce ball for giants, huh?
Yeah, maybe bocce ball for giants. Some of them line up, and the deduction is, well, they must point to some important archaeologic significant finding that is yet to be discovered.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around, I think.
You know, the Spaniards had the good decency of killing off all of these people, and therefore all knowledge of why and what they are. So it's one of the world's most famous mysteries that is still yet arguably unexplained.
Why they killed these people is a mystery too. To me, anyway. I mean,
yeah, I think homicide can always be a mystery if you keep asking the why question long enough. Here's a fun one. I got another fun one. I know you're gonna like this one.
I like all of them. I just don't know what to say about, you know, a lot of random big giant stone spheres, because who knows? All right, what you got?
The Antikythera mechanism, that was the ancient Greek clock that was discovered fairly recently, I think about 100 years ago, something like that, and dates back at least 2,000 years. It was underwater, and despite all of the age and the elements and the weather, I've seen this thing dissected, and it looked like a Swiss watch or a German-built fine precision piece of machinery. It had interlocking gears. It had ornate carvings. It looked like a modern-day Swiss timepiece.
The further we go,
2,000 years old.
Yeah, well, you know what we're going to find, I'm sure, is what we always find. The further we go down the rabbit hole, the more the official narrative starts to crumble about, you know, the nature of humanity. You know, but people are invested in keeping the narrative, and the science leads to people's bank accounts.
It all makes perfect sense, expressed in dollars and cents. Pounds, pennies, no, pounds, shillings, and pence.
There you go.
I misquoted Pink Floyd. We're gonna have to retake this whole thing. We'll just start over again. Can we start over again? No, I'm being told we cannot. You know, a device like this, the only thing that remotely compares didn't come along for another 1,000 years. So this is one of the most confusing, fantastic, discovery, I think, for me, of an engineering. It's a tiny little thing. So we're not talking, normally talk about big things, right? Like the balls or Stonehenge. But what in the world was this thing doing on a Greek cargo ship 2,000 years ago, with so much time and effort put into this timepiece and technology that just simply could not have existed at that time?
Well, technology that obviously, I hate to be such a snarky person, that obviously existed at that time, you know. The question is, why only one?
I think you just blew my mind.
Did I? I do.
Well, there's a couple possibilities. One, that there wasn't just one, there were tons, and this was one that happened to be found in a time and a place and a preservation way that allowed it to last when the rest of them disappeared. Or, like you're suggesting, maybe there was one and it was kept secret, and that technology was kept secret by a privileged few, and this device was never supposed to be found.
I'm really not suggesting either. I'm just wondering, that's all, because it doesn't make any sense. And as we go down the list of these archaeological anomalies, we're probably going to have similar conversations repeatedly, but I think it's, one of the things that we like to do with this non-ordinary mind is remind people, you want to know about the complete human experience, you got to go beyond average.
Yeah, beyond our understanding, beyond textbooks, beyond, think outside of that box. So
one of my favorite jokes, and I use it with patients all the time. It's not a great joke, but it's illuminative. You see a guy crawling around the floor in a parking lot at night. You say, "What are you doing?" "Well, I dropped my keys." "Well, where'd you drop them?" "Oh, over there." "What are you doing over here?" "The light is better here." We want to look where we dropped the keys. You want to find this out. I mean, there's so much cool stuff, but you have to be willing to understand that everything is wrong.
Maybe not everything, but question everything as if it were wrong, and draw your own conclusions, connect your own dots. I learned this lesson, I think, very early in life, because my stepfather was a physician and a very brilliant man. And one of his areas of, I guess, a hobby that he was especially brilliant at was archaeology.
Wow.
And he would travel to a lot of these places, and he would say things, and I would say, "Well, that's not what's in my textbook," And he'd read the textbook and he'd start correcting it. And like, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." And
well, I mean, yeah, it is wrong.
and it made me realize, like, wow, because we have this tendency. Well, nowadays we go on, a website or a chat room, and whatever a 5-year-old Pakistani boy has posted, we take as gospel, right? But the truth is, if it's in an encyclopedia, if it's in a textbook, it's just as tentative of an information
Bingo.
as any other source or medium. I remember that my first day of my second year of medical school, we walked in and they said, "Good news and bad news. Good news is we know 10% of what we taught you just a year ago is wrong. The bad news is we don't know which 10%. That's the mindset you have to always have when you're taking any information as an objective truth. Question everything.
I would up that 10% nowadays.
It's more like 90.
A lot.
So you're the resident expert on the next one, because you have been there yourself. And of course, I'm talking about Qin Shi Huang's tomb, which was uncovered in China's Shaanxi province in 1974 by farmers. They accidentally unearthed arguably one of the largest archaeologic finds of this 20th century anyway. And tell me about it. You've been there.
Yeah.
You've stood in line.
I've rarely been more blown away by something in the material world. I didn't really know much about this, and I was on a tour in China, and we're going to go to Xi'an. I'm going to see terracotta warriors. I only know terracotta is like you put plants in these little bowls. It was as big as 2 football fields. Thousands of these warriors and horses and carriages, full size.
Life size, yeah.
Life size. all to protect the emperor after he's dead. That's part I didn't really understand why that would work, but just it was overwhelming, the scope, and that someone would put that much effort into this.
And the
Now,
precision,
it was
of it.
unbelievable precision. I'm still blown away. I'm still blown away by it. So many. How many years did it take him to do it? Thousands.
Yeah, I mean, you think about
And
our attention span now, and it's like Instagram is about as long as people can focus their attention. This was a project that not only required I mean, look at the Great Wall of China itself, but a tremendous number of artisans. These aren't just people; these were artisans that carved these life-size. You know, they even have faces on them. And I don't want to embarrass you, but you got in line thinking you were in the line for the bathroom, and you're behind two football rows of people who are made out of terracotta.
well, I mean, I knew we were going to see some archaeological thing. I just didn't know what it was. And you get off the bus and you walk in and it's like, what?
These
So
people are
impressive.
terracotta.
So impressive.
2,200 years ago. What were they thinking? Were they truly thinking this will guard the emperor and the afterlife?
Well, I don't know what they were thinking, what the emperor was thinking, but they were thinking if we don't do this, the emperor's going to have us killed. I would say that was part of the motivation. But the energy of the place was uncanny. I mean, you were waiting for these guys to start moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's how lifelike they were. Horses, carriages. I'm still blown away, but you can see I'm still blown away by it. They told us that the emperor, had this, for the afterlife, and okay, I don't know how they know, but
well, if it was constructed when the emperor was alive and the emperor was, people have a lot of bizarre, we've talked about it on the show, bizarre concepts of death, fear of death, what's going to happen to them after death, how they want their body handled after death. And that doesn't just vary from culture to culture, it varies from person to person. And I've always found that really interesting. And I did a project in medical school looking at that issue because it fascinated me so much. But this guy might have not only had the belief, but had a fear that maybe dark forces, demons, or he wouldn't get into Stovacor, whatever the Chinese equivalent of a good afterlife would be, and was so convinced of that, and had the resources and the ability and the artisans at hand, like you said, to, hey, do this or else, that it remains one of the, I think, greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. To me, it's a wonder of the world because it's that
absolutely,
impressive.
Absolutely. The thing, but this is not just Chinese. Didn't the Egyptians pack the tombs with goodies?
Oh yeah. Vikings did. I mean, lots of cultures did this to help protect you or provide for your journey into the afterlife. That part wasn't uncommon, but something of this scope and scale is truly impressive.
Yeah, and I'm not the expert in what it meant, but boy, the experience of it was something special.
Here's a fun fact. Did you know that the soil there happens to be has extremely high levels of mercury, which yeah, and nobody totally knows why. It could be natural deposit, it could be the depth, but to this day, it still registers very high levels of mercury, and it makes you wonder how the artisans fared. Maybe they all went a little at Mad Hatter themselves, and that's what makes the thing so lifelike, so real, so vivid.
Yeah.
Oh, and another fun fact, there's tons of treasures and his tomb is inside, but as far as we know, no one has ever been in it. So it remains completely undisturbed.
Do we know if they found it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's missing. I think there's a mausoleum. It's like a pyramid-shaped mausoleum about a mile of where the terracotta, about a mile from where the terracotta army was discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's ever entered the mausoleum that supposedly holds Qin Shi Huang's remains. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You know, another good one that I know you're going to love, because we talk about it, it feels like yesterday, it was last week, but we've talked about it a lot, is the lost city of Atlantis.
Lost continent, I think.
The lost continent.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's been discovered. They discovered it in the Bahamas. Oh, yeah. And then they discovered it in the Greek islands. Oh, yeah. And then they discovered it in Cuba. Oh, yeah. And then they discovered it in Japan. It goes on and on. People have claimed to have found it all over the world.
Well, there are ruins outside of Bimini. And the interesting thing is, if you work on those ruins, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to never talk about it. Well, if it isn't real, why would they need a non-disclosure agreement, you know? Because if it's bogus, you're not revealing anything. So, you know, sometimes these governmental edicts reveal more than they think they do.
To me, I think I like the Bimini theory for lots of reasons. One, it's close to our continent. Two, if you actually look at there is something there, obviously, with the stonework and the roads all like still kind of perfectly laid out underwater. That's very compelling. It obviously was something. Three, it makes sense geologically. If you look at Florida is just a constantly moving, depending on sea level, it's a constantly moving body of land. If you look at it at a longer time scale. And this was supposedly about 10,000 years ago, because Plato, I think, was the first who described he described it as an island. But it was supposedly a great naval power. And one day it sunk into the sea to be shrouded in mystery.
Well, if you want to know more about Atlantis and you're willing to keep your mind open, the person to read is Edgar Cayce, who talked about it extensively, thousands of readings on Atlantis.
Yeah, he did talk. Lots of people talk about Atlantis. I think that's
but not with the detail that Cayce supplied. It was remarkable, the detail and consistency of the story.
Didn't he give account of people's experiences there at the time?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, he would be doing health readings, and that's why people came to him. But then he would just spontaneously talk about what was kind of underneath that. And this soul was, in Atlantis, and they were one of the sons of Belial, and blah blah blah. Personal story that I may have even told on the podcast before. When I was delving into past life regression therapy, one of my lifetimes was from Atlantis, and in that lifetime, I was the high priest of the healing temple, and the idea was that I would be wearing some kind of device on my head, patient wear a device on his or her head, and we'd be connected to a big amethyst crystal to amplify the vibration to create some kind of resonance. So, okay, I'm now writing a science fiction novel. When I got into the Cayce material, which was much later, well, 2 years, something like that, I saw the story in his material, very similar to what I had seen in my regression. So that's a pretty strong hit, if you ask me. I always look for that kind of thing when I deal with sort of, I don't know, metaphysical kind of stuff. This was a big deal, and the idea of Atlantis how Atlantis went under. If you take the Casey material, we're doing it right now in this culture. I don't know if we're gonna have a flood or who knows, but I would say the idea is that a very materialist, scientific, powerful culture versus a very spiritual culture trying to use the same energy for different means, get involved in genetic experiments, AI, very fascinating, and that we're doing it again now. Whether maybe we'll have a different outcome.
Well, we'll hope we'll have a different outcome.
You know, I mean, I'm pretty radical about these things because of my own experience. I didn't know anything about Atlantis when I had the regression. I'm just trying to study this, and I'm my own, the best guinea pig is me. So when I saw that, I was in my own mind, I was kind of shocked, but I not nearly as shocked as when I read it in the Edgar Casey material.
Edgar Casey's a fascinating guy to me because he's been so polarizing, sort of like Carlos Castaneda in an odd comparison, although they're very different, but their effect on their reception by people is wildly extreme, which I find that fascinating. Like, you would think you'd have more people in the maybe this, maybe that, but people either write Edgar Casey off as a total quack, or people think he was an absolute genius.
Well, the thing about Casey was that his medical channeling, I don't know what you would call it, was so good that they opened a hospital with doctors who would write the prescriptions from what he came up with. And the hospital was doing great. And it only closed because the stock market crashed and the investors lost all their money. The hospital was doing wonderfully, and the treatments were well regarded. Casey's basically the first integrative medical person in our culture. Yeah. Obviously, other cultures had it for millennia. Personally, the stuff that Casey came up with was dead on, especially when it came to alternative medicine, natural cures of illness. Casey, you know, as an additional fact, he didn't listen to his own channeling, because whatever that is that was telling him this stuff told him he had to go slower. And he didn't. He died young.
Well, let that be a lesson to you.
I know.
Our next mystery comes from the Griswold family. National Lampoon's European Vacation. And of course, I'm referring to the elusive Stonehenge. One of my favorites.
I was there too. I went to Stonehenge.
Oh, that's right. I was going to say you were at more of one of these, but I'm pretty confident this is astrological in significance. But you know, poor Clark Griswold, when he backed the station wagon into it and knocked it all down, you know, that was a travesty for humanity, really.
You know, I was there in 1977.
It didn't really happen here.
Okay, no, it didn't happen because I was there. They still let you go in and touch the stones then. You can't do that anymore. And it just, I went there on two different days. One was in the evening, the sun was setting, it was gorgeous. And then one was the middle of the day. And it really, I don't know if it was just my hopes and wishes and dreams, you know, about going to Stonehenge, or it really was, but it felt like a magical place.
Yeah, a lot of people describe it as a very powerful, almost like the terracotta, the warriors, the soldiers. It has a very powerful, energetic stamp on it.
Yeah, there have been a few places. The Wailing Wall was like that for me in Jerusalem.
Sedona was like that.
Sedona, yes, yeah, same thing.
It is the
Very
most of them.
powerful, very powerful stuff. You
The-
know, and it sort of encourages the idea that there are energetic portals in the world, and that maybe these things get built around those portals.
And that the people of that era, in this case, you're talking about 4,000 years. That people forget how old Stonehenge is. 4,000 years. As an engineer, I can't help but marvel at the technology of the size of these things and where they were quarried from.
They're big.
Enormous. They're massive. They're tons, and they were transported for miles and miles and miles from a quarry. We still don't know how they did this.
No, we don't.
It's kind of why it's that it is a seven wonder of the world, but it's kind of why I think you have to ask, what were these people thinking? How did they unite into, unless, like you said, they were aware of a thinny or a portal or some sort of energetic significance? I think it was probably astrological. But why there? Why not do it where the quarry was? How could they measure the alignment of whatever they are pointing at, or even if it was a temple, why not build the temple closer to the quarry?
Have you ever been to the Coral Castle down in Homestead, Florida?
Yes.
It's very similar energy to Stonehenge. I love the Coral
Smaller,
Castle.
but yeah.
It is smaller, but it feels special. I don't know how else to put it. I loved it there. I've been to the Coral Castle a number of times and always loved it.
And they have that huge front door that, I forget, 60 tons that
you just go like this and it opens
with one finger. Huh? Yeah, that's a more modern, I forget the year that guy built it, but no one knows totally how he built it, because he wouldn't let anyone in to observe.
He was he was secretive, and we really don't know.
Well, here's a fun one. This one I like, because at first I was like, well, okay, this is kind of interesting and boring, but again, it challenges our understanding of human thought and human evolution. But there are these ancient animal traps, and most of this stuff comes from Egypt, Israel, Palestine, Jordan. But this is something that puzzled archaeologists. And I like this because, similar to the Nazca Lines, which we're going to talk about in a bit, no one discovered them until airplanes were invented. And really, airplanes were invented in 1903, but it wasn't until the 20s and 30s, when they were flying airplanes high enough and covering enough of the earth, that they discovered things like these ancient animal traps or the Nazca Lines. But there's 40 miles of similar mega boulders that are placed strategically in a way that, from the air, and they think these are about 300 BC, just to give you a time frame. They nickname it the kites by the scientists, because they look like kites from the sky. They were purposely arranged similar to the Nazca Lines. Again, super heavy boulders, and was a mystery for a long time, since the 20s, 30s. And fairly recently, there was a study that I think kind of substantiated, or is the leading theory, that the people of that era, again, you're talking, 2,400 years ago, they did this to trap animals, essentially to create these barriers to herd animals over a long, kind of like a large net in the ocean for catching shrimp or something. This is the land-based equivalent, and it funnels all these wild animals, catches them, and then, almost like a guardrail on an interstate, it's an unnatural barrier. If a deer gets stuck out on the interstate, it's kind of screwed. And they all get directed into this pit, or an area where the local people could much easily capture their food and kill their food, and basically harvest in large numbers the natural abundant animals of the land that they were feasting on in that time.
But at least that one, there's a reason.
It's the best theory.
Oh, okay.
But again, why the follow-up evidence hasn't really supported it? Why aren't you seeing like mass graves of bones and stuff,
Oh,
or
okay.
campfires? They don't really see that. So it could be that that's all long gone based on the topography and the hostile conditions of the desert and animals carrying, maybe. But to me, it's sort of like a mini Nazca line, because why go through the trouble of getting such large boulders? This could have been done by artificially building walls, right? That's what we've done since agriculture began. You're trying to contain livestock. You build fences or walls. Even if it wasn't made out of wood, they would have stacked almost like mini Great Wall of China to create pens and stuff like that, or like a guardrail, a natural barrier. Why do these mega stones, and how did they move them is still another question, similar to Stonehenge. What do you know about the Nazca Lines? Speaking of Nazca.
Well, I've seen lots of TV shows about them. Once again, can't see them from the ground.
No, they were always there, and no one had the slightest clue what they were. They were just curiosities on the earth. They don't really look impressive at all from the ground. And then similar in the 1920s and 30s, airplanes started flying over. Peru is where they are.
Right.
And scientists were stunned. These were massive, massive markings in the earth, and fairly shallow markings, but enormous when you look from the sky. Like, I've seen scientists, you can almost kick them and interrupt them. There's very small stones and maybe a couple feet wide. What's interesting is the precision of them, the linearity of them, without modern GPS or compass tools. If anyone's ever gotten lost in the forest, they can attribute, I'm definitely going in this straight line. And then you look at the path from above and they've been doing a snafu. It is very hard to get something straight.
When I was in Ekbalam, which is an ancient site in the Yucatan, our guide took me to this little primitive hut it was a stone hut that they had built. Took out his phone, put on a compass. It was aligned exactly 0 degrees north. I mean, from the computer in the phone.
Yeah.
He said, "Look at this. Tell me what you see." So, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Some of the scientists think that was how that, like, ritual communication. It was sort of the telegraphs of that era, in a way that they communicated. But what's bizarre is, in this part of the desert, if you just remove the upper layer of rocks, it's got like a red soil. And if you just part it, and they only part it a couple feet, and put the little rocks to the side, almost like you're creating a little walkway, the earth underneath the surface is a little bit lighter. So it's like, maybe chalk on a driveway. And they've remained there for 2,000 years.
It's incredible.
That predates the Incans. So, one, who built these things? What were they thinking? And why was this so important to them? Did they have a knowledge we have since forgotten? Were they able to connect into, like you said, the Mazatecs, the Aztecs, the Incans? Were they able to connect into geomagnetic lines of significance, astrological sign? Either way, they didn't have the tools that we had now. And they figured this out somehow. So we forgot.
We have a conceit that we are the most advanced society ever on the planet. And maybe we're wrong.
That gets dangerous because, and I don't know why we think it. I think we think it because we look around at our technology, and they didn't have it. So therefore they were dumb because everybody's got iPhones. Like, you just go to the store and buy one. It's very myopic, I think, in that regard, to assume that they lived anything like we did. And furthermore, most intelligent people who have studied sociology and evolution and archaeology almost universally agree that they were actually more intelligent than we are now, not only in terms of IQ points, but brain size. Our brains are actually shrinking. And evolutionarily, they should be continuing to get more and more layered. That's the way evolution has typically been.
Yeah,
So
well,
we're actually getting dumber and less resourceful.
if you live in a toxic environment, you're going to get dumber. This is 1 + 1 is 2 on this one.
I don't know that anyone, even with the technology, would have the discipline to build the pyramids today.
Oh yeah.
Why would we do that? Could we do that? Yes.
I don't know. The precision that they have, the way the blocks fit together.
I think we could do it. I think we could recreate it. I think the materials, the technology exist. But here's the huge difference. It would never happen because there's a financial barrier. There's the desire to do it. What would be the purpose? We don't have anything motivating modern society, such as an emperor over us threatening our lives, or a god that we believe has directed us. It would not happen. We only built the Hoover Dam because we had the need. Necessity is the mother of invention. We don't have the need to build pyramids. And these people did. And was it because they were idiots? No, we just said that they were most likely smarter and more resourceful and more insightful.
Well,
so,
and we're bumping up against an official narrative that doesn't fit with the data. There was a geologist, I mean, he might have been an archaeologist, but I think he was a geologist named Robert Schoch, who looked at the weather patterns on the stones around the Sphinx and concluded that the Sphinx was built 10,000 years ago. And
which is 5,000 years before the pyramids, correct?
Well, the idea was that the pyramids were built, thousands of years before, the conventional knowledge says.
Gotcha.
Also. And even though the data is presented to the, Zahi Hawass, I think, is the guy running the head of antiquities in Egypt, he just dismisses it. It doesn't fit with the narrative, that they've lived with for so long. And yet, if you read Schoch's book, which I have, it's compelling.
Yeah, and I mean, to be threatened or oppositional or confrontational with alternative or challenging theories is by definition anti-science.
Well, not recently. But anyway, I agree with you.
Enough to even listen to, hey, there might be new evidence. We would still, people still do believe the earth is flat, I suppose, but we would still believe the earth is the center of the universe and things like that. It was so hard to overturn those ideas. How is it any different now trying to overturn commonly held ideas and beliefs?
Yeah, ask Galileo.
How's he doing, by the way?
Not that good.
Oh, that was awkward. I didn't know.
He's made a comeback. Everybody agrees with him now. But, not, if he were a musician, he'd be decomposing.
Thanks. I haven't laughed like that in a long time.
Okay, I'm glad I could supply you with some fun.
Another great thing about Cairo is the size is so big that they think a large portion is still uncovered, undiscovered. Even the parts that have been discovered, they're constantly still discovering new shafts and new tunnels built within the pyramids that have been uncovered themselves. And they're figuring out a bigger puzzle picture, not only in the alignment with certain stars, if you can adjust for the time shift of the universe, but unexplained significance of their orientation, their purposeful orientation. It's just, you could spend your whole life continuing to uncover the archaeological and spiritual significance of those massive artifacts.
If you really want to go down the rabbit hole on the pyramids, look up the work of Joseph Farrell, whose contention is that they were once energy weapons. And he, once again, makes a very compelling argument. He's written a ton of books, brilliant man, written a ton of books on this stuff, and connects it with ancient texts, which seem to be, phantasmagorical, but he says if you look at them carefully, they're just documents of an interstellar war that pyramids were part of. And he connects it to the asteroid belt, why there should be a planet there. And okay, so for us, yeah, it's kind of pie in the sky, but nobody can explain the asteroid belt anyway. And there are some astronomers that claim there used to be a planet there.
Yeah, it's a popular theory.
So I think one of the things that I'm happy with our journey on the non-ordinary mind is just presenting information for people to think about it and wonder about the nature of the universe, the nature of consciousness. When you get down to, okay, think about how hard it would be to build pyramids at the size that they were. And by the way, I was at Chichen Itza in Mexico. Pizza? Yeah, kind of what pepperoni pizza? No, the ancient site Chichen Itza, and the guide said the same thing. 90% of this has not been uncovered yet.
Get to work, you hippies.
Yeah. No, I'm done. I'm done with digging out pyramids. But once again, it was a magical place. You could feel it.
Well, speaking about challenging our understanding, this one's a little bit less commonly known, and I don't know why, because it's important, and I think it speaks to the point of what we think we know and what new discoveries show how the conflict and how much we might be off. Is a place called Gobekli Tepe.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites.
I know you know it, but a lot of people have never heard of this. But the reason why I like this one and it's so important is we think we understand when modern humans became civilized. About 10,000. Well, about 10,000 years ago is the commonly held belief, or about 8,000 BC, and it took time to learn how to be agrarian, to build shelters and stone monuments and temples and stuff like that. Basically, the evolution of civilization. And what's crazy about this site is long before any other evidence that we know of humans building similar type of structures is this site in Turkey, a rural area of Turkey. I forget exactly where, but multiple rings of these huge stone pillars, monumental, similarly carved, almost Stonehenge. But it's considered to be a place of worship, almost like a pagan temple. I have my own kind of mixed thoughts about that, because the people who built it were pretty nomadic. At least we thought that they were. So what are nomads doing building a temple? That's something that should not have come along until thousands and thousands of years later. And we didn't even think they were agrarian at that point.
Yeah, and my understanding of Gobekli Tepe, and I may be wrong, was that it's almost as if it was covered up intentionally, not just the winds of sand, that whoever was there when they left, they covered it up.
Wasn't it covered up with stone? Like it wasn't just
Yeah,
covered.
I don't remember, but it was covered up with something so that people wouldn't find it. And I find that equally fascinating to the fact that it's several thousand years older than it should be. Not that it should be, but by our conventional narrative, that it should be.
Yeah, and that's a long time. That's a long time now, and that was a really long time then. You know, if you're talking minimum 2,000 years.
Okay, I'm talking more like 4.
Compare this technology we have today to the technology of 2,000 years ago, and even that gap is very narrow compared to, you know, 8th millennia BC to 10th millennia BC. That's light years. And so something like this simply should not exist with our understanding of, and I've always been fascinated, at what point did humans come out of the jungle and become civilized? It didn't happen overnight. It probably happened in different parts of the world in different ways. And back then there were not that many people on the planet too, you got to remember. So it's fascinating. How did we get from crawling out of the jungle to, you know, Roman, the power of the Egyptians, or the power of the Babylonians, or the power of the Romans, or the power of the Greek, the Turks.
Apparently people are fascinated enough with this stuff to keep a show like Ancient Aliens going for a number of years. Now, it's sort of a, like, what do you call it? Comfort food in a way. It's not very nutritious. And I hate the way they say, ancient alien theorists say yes. I think that's just a bunch of crap. But they're bringing these interesting things to people's awareness. I don't always agree with their interpretation of them. I like the idea that it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And it is a mystery. And we can theorize. And maybe there were aliens. Who knows? You know, maybe we're aliens. I don't know. The bottom line, though, is if you don't know that the mysteries exist, how do you dream about it? How do you wonder? How do you, you know, we want to inspire people's imagination to think something bigger. We're going to need that. The place is a mess, kids.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the last one that we will end on in terms of wonder. And that's, of course, the Ark of the Covenant. And I like this one because only one man has actually found the Ark of the Covenant. And that, of course, is Indiana Jones. Wait, that was a movie? Okay. So nobody has actually found the Ark of the Covenant, it turns out. And that's the gold encrusted wooden chest that supposedly in the book of Exodus, the 10 commandments, I think, were stored there in this holy box in Jerusalem. And the temple was destroyed, of course, because that's just what you did at the time. I think about 600 BC. Thanks Nebuchadnezzar. I think the Babylonian army is who took that out. But no one knows if the ark's real, what became of it, was it lost? It wasn't until Indiana Jones actually found this mystery that has, without evidence, really. I mean, you could argue Shroud of Turin and Noah's Ark and some of the other ones. You could argue that they had some evidence, but nobody has ever found this. It might just be like a Viking epic. And I don't mean to offend any religions here, but
I don't mean to offend, well, some people, not everyone. There is a theory that the powers that be send out the truth disguised in films. E.T., yeah. Close Encounters, Indiana Jones. You know, what do these films have in common? Well, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, you know, I don't know. It it's pretty cool. And I do love all those movies because they make you wonder. They make you imagine. Now, maybe it just obfuscates the reality. If these things are real and everybody's, oh, well, it's just a movie. I don't know.
Well, it's the question that drives us.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
The mystery.
we've run out of time.